seminar is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Consult with your medical provider for medical advice or treatment. Although the presenters try to keep the information in this seminar as accurate and timely as possible, the speakers and Mather Hospital assume no duty to ensure the seminar is error-free. The speakers and Mather Hospital are not responsible or liable for any claim, loss, or damage resulting from you viewing this seminar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our HealthyU webinar series. Today's topic is gambling addiction services. At any time during the presentation, please feel free to answer any questions you may have using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can within the time allotted once the presentation concludes. Your questions will remain anonymous. For today's presenter, we have Alice Miller. Alice is a licensed clinical social worker registered in New York State. She has practiced in the social work field with mental health and addictions for over 20 years. Alice started as a social worker in an agency in charge of mentally ill, chemically addicted patients. In this program and other programs is where she first learned the need for addiction services in the mental health field. During her time as a social worker and leader, she has held a few different positions as director of programs and also the dual recovery coordinator for Suffolk County. Currently, Alice is the director of the outpatient chemical dependency clinic at Mather Hospital and Northwell Health. Thank you again, Alice, for joining us today. The floor is all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with you in just a second. You just give me 2 seconds. Of course, it's giving me some trouble. So today we are going to be talking about problem gambling. Jonathan, it seems that I can't share the correct screen. I just want to make sure that that's what you're seeing.
Yep, I can see the full screen.
Great. So today we're going to talk about problem gambling. As Jonathan said, as Nicolette had said, I am Alice Miller. I'm the director of the Mather Outpatient Chemical Dependency Clinic. And as we know, gambling is not a new topic. It has been out there in the world for a very long time. And in some ways, it's an addiction that many people don't talk about or admit that there's a problem till there are other problems that come from it. Gambling is similar to other addictions, but also has some of its own characteristics that we're going to talk about today. So what we expect to get out of today's training is what is problem gambling, the different types of gambling, the impact gambling has on the individual, family, friends, and the workplace, and where can someone go for help. So before we get into the gambling portion, I wanted to quickly discuss the cycle of addiction. So it starts with that emotional trigger. Usually that trigger is going to lead to a craving, and the craving is going to lead to whatever ritual people do. That ritual leads to using. Using could be the gambling portion, it could be a substance, and then at the end, people feel that guilt. And once again, it starts all over again with that emotional trigger. So what is gambling? Gambling can be defined as an activity where an item of value is placed at risk in an attempt to gain something of greater value. So anyone involved in gambling activities has the potential to develop an addiction. However, some individuals and groups are more at risk, and we are going to talk about some of those. So the different types of gambling: horse racing, lottery, casinos, off-track betting, cards and dice, crypto, office pools, raffle, stock market. I'm sure there's many more that aren't on this slide. I'm sure that many of the people that have joined us today have gambled at least once in their life. Doesn't mean you have a gambling problem, but it's still something to look at. So approximately 85% of US adults have gambled at least once in their lives, and 60% report gambling in the last year. 2 million adults are estimated to meet criteria for severe gambling problems each year, and another 4 to 6 million would be considered to have mild or moderate gambling problems. So gambling behavior can be classified into 4 categories: non-gambling, low risk, moderate risk, problem gamblers. So adolescents and veterans, aging adults, and Latinos are just a few of the major groups termed special populations, and they're considered at higher risk than the general population for developing a gambling addiction. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those different groups today. So problem gambling to lead to all of these things that are listed underneath this umbrella. And we're going to go into some of those as well: financial problems, preoccupation, lying about the time or money spent on gambling, relationship problems, and using money meant for other things. So the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic manual that gives the diagnoses that we see out in the world today, they list gambling as a persistent and recurring problematic gambling behavior leading to clinically significant impairment or distress, as indicated by the individual exhibiting 4 or more of the following in a 12-month period. So it breaks it down in this slide to tell you what some of those things that they're talking about. So you need to gamble with increasing amounts of money in order to achieve the desired excitement. So this shows tolerance. The more you increase, the more tolerance you have. Is restless or irritable when attempting to cut down or stop gambling. This is withdrawal. Has made repeated unsuccessful efforts to control, cut back, or stop gambling. Is often preoccupied with gambling, so having persistent thoughts of reliving past gambling experiences and thinking of ways to get money in which to gamble. That's that preoccupation. Often gambles when feeling distressed, helpless, guilty, anxious, depressed. So many people gamble in which to escape from these feelings. After losing money gambling, often returns another day to get even, so chasing one's losses. Lies to conceal the extent of involvement with gambling. Has jeopardized or lost a significant relationship, job, or educational, or even a career opportunity because of gambling. And then relies on others to provide money to relieve desperate financial situations caused by gambling. So in a treatment facility like mine, you can still come into treatment even if you don't meet full criteria for a gambling disorder. So if you meet 1 or 2 of these, it's still something that you can work on in treatment. Some warning signs of problem gambling. So the same of the borrowing for gambling, the lying about the time, the spending a lot of time on gambling, bragging about winnings. So some of the questions that we may ask somebody is, are you or a loved one haunted by bill collectors? Do you have thoughts of gambling that disrupt your sleep? Do arguments or disappointments or frustrations cause you or a loved one to gamble? Have you ever had self-destructive thoughts because of gambling results? Have you or a loved one lost time from work or school due to gambling? So does your spouse or partner or other loved one promise faithfully that he or she will stop gambling yet continues to gamble? And what about personality changes? Have you seen personality changes in your loved one? So a big topic is adolescence and gambling. So we know already that youth use potentially addictive substances and behaviors as an unhealthy way to deal with their stress. And this also includes gambling. So what about gambling? Have you ever seriously thought about how underage gambling affects youths? In fact, youth gambling problem rates are 3 times higher than adults. So adolescent warning signs, and some of these warning signs are typical of adolescents that may be using drugs as well. So it's very difficult to tell the difference. So your child may be exhibiting any absences from school, sudden drop in grades or failure to complete their assignments, change in personality. Some of this is typical adolescence as well. Exaggerated display of money or other material possessions, bragging about winnings, intense interest in gambling conversations. They could be borrowing or stealing money, withdrawing from family and friends, exaggerating use of the word bet. They may be talking about a bookie or a point spread, the underdog. So watching out for some of that language. Gambling in the workplace. What's the impact? And what can you do to help? So does the employee spend excessive time away from their job? Excessive time away could also include extended use of the phone to place bets, reviewing the racing and the sports on the stock pages in the newspaper when they're supposed to be working, participating in cards, lottery, and or office pools. Does the employee take unusual amounts of sick time? So people that do have a diagnosis of gambling can suffer from depression or hypertension or ulcers. So they could have real health problems. They could also be taking sick time so they can go gamble. Does the employee arrive late? Does the employee talk or worry about money or ask to borrow money? And does the employee always seem to be the person who starts or runs the office pools for the sports, the lottery, or for birth of a baby? Do they encourage coworkers to bet in office pools or to bet more money? Does the employee's use of company money seem suspicious or inappropriate? So I worked in an office where people would leave on lunch to go gamble at a nearby casino. They would encourage more and more people to come with them as well on these excursions. And how uncomfortable is it to be asked about office pools and then not enter into one when asked? Does gambling really have a place in the workplace? We may not think about it when we're doing these things in the workplace, but how does it affect others when pools and raffles are set up? Mobile sports gambling. So these are apps like FanDuel, DraftKings. These apps are continuing to grow. New York passed a bill in 2013 that made sports gambling legal at the state level, but the state didn't open its first official sports book until July 2019. Mobile sports betting launched on January 8th, 2022. And then now there are 9 live online sports books in the Empire State. However, you can't bet on in-state collegiate games and events, including player prop bets, is still prohibited. The different types that you can bet on within these, I think most of us know that there's so many different things that you can put your money on. So you can put your money on the game outcomes. You can put it on the spread, so that margin of victory. You can even put it on the coin toss, the national anthem, the next scoring play. So there's many things that people bet on each one, and that money keeps adding up for them. So esports is another one. Esport teams, clubs as campus sanctioned activity. So gambling within gaming, such as loot boxes. A loot box is a consumable virtual item. So it's often in the shape of a box or another container, and it gives a player a random selection of in-game items that they can also gamble on. And some of these esports are directed more at adolescents as well, or young adults. So retail investing apps, so non-professional investing, you can invest small amounts, lower price per share. So almost 15% began investing in 2020. So gambling addiction affects everyone. 70% of people also have an alcohol disorder. 38% have a drug disorder, 60% have nicotine, and 2/3 report that their mental health has suffered, and 41% have diagnosed anxiety. And the difference between males and females. So males are the risk takers, gamble more frequently, gamble with more money, and start gambling younger. Females gamble to escape. They start gambling later, and they develop the addiction faster. So what are some of the consequences of gambling? I'm sure we know some of them. Career and reputation suffer, loss of possession and property, loss of family and friends, and sometimes with that goes the loss of trust, the loss of respect. Your finances suffer in the family, health issues, respiratory problems, chronic tiredness, migraines. 4.8% of gamblers who sought treatment had attempted suicide, while 27.4% reported having suicidal thoughts. Impacts on the individual, some more of those: spending the retirement funds or college savings for your kids, cashing in insurance policies, eating less, or willingness to go without eating, mood swings, problems with loved ones. So years ago, I knew a financial advisor that he got divorced from his wife, and his wife found out that he gambled away all of their life savings and the kids' college fund money. So it doesn't just happen to it happens to all different types of people. Impacts on the family: frustration, anxiety, depression. So our family members are going to feel these things too. Lack of trust, financial difficulties, anticipation of a loved one's mood. So sometimes if somebody is at a casino with their significant other, and let's say that person continues to lose money, they can start to get angry, nervous, irritable. Maybe then they start to drink to help them calm down. This leads to many issues in the relationship. And that is where partner violence can come into play as well. So 1/3 of problem gamblers have reported being a victim of perpetrator or intimate partner violence. And 90% of those affected by someone else's gambling behavior reported emotional distress. Impacts on society. So 20% of addicted gamblers have filed for bankruptcy. 20% of the unhoused population are gambling addicts, and 60% of those addicted to gambling will commit crimes. The overall cost to taxpayers is estimated at $56,000 for each problem gambler, including cost of treatment, health-related costs, absenteeism at work, and time spent in court. So this is an example of a brief screening that can be done. So a brief biosocial gambling screen, just simply 3 questions. During the past 12 months, have you become restless, irritable, or anxious when trying to cut down on gambling? During the past 12 months, have you tried to keep your family or friends from knowing how much you gambled? And during the past 12 months, did you have such financial trouble as a result of your gambling that you had to get help with living expenses from family, friends, or welfare? So if people are answering yes to these questions, then further screening needs to be done. Right now, in a lot of the ERs, they do screening for alcoholism, but they're not doing screening for gambling. So this screening is usually done at a treatment facility like mine. People will come in and they're coming here maybe for substance use. However, we do screen everybody for gambling as well. So relapse prevention. Even with treatment, you may return to gambling, especially if you spend time with people who gamble or you're in gambling environments. So the people that we are with, the places we go, and the things we do are the most important. So where do people go for help? There are self-help groups, there are step-based programs. Motivational interviewing is a tool that's used during therapy. Gamblers Anonymous, peer support. Gam-Anon is for That's for significant others that have people in their lives that are gambling. The New York Council on Problem Gambling, OASAS, which is what my program is a part of, National Council on Problem Gambling. These are all places that people can turn for help and support and even resources. 12 steps. In the problem gambling, there are the 12 steps that people have to live by. So we admitted we were powerless over gambling, that our lives had become unmanageable. This is the same step for somebody that suffers from an alcohol use disorder. So it's the hardest step for people to admit to, because they basically have to admit that they're powerless over their own addiction. In a lot of these outpatient groups, they're working through these steps in order to stay sober and be in recovery. So these are some other options that people could listen to and get more information. So there is a podcast. It's a conversation about gambling addiction and how it affects the family and the individual and the society. It also talks about mental health. And then Dave Yeager is a U.S. Army veteran and his recovery from gambling addiction, and then raising awareness about problem gambling in the state of New York. These are all different areas where you can get some support regarding gambling. So where can you send somebody for help for gambling addiction? The next few slides will give you some information about the outpatient program where you can send people for help. We provide screening and assessment for individuals in need of substance abuse treatment and gambling addictions. So in order to come to outpatient, you don't have to have substance use. You can just have a gambling addiction. There is a separate track here just for our gambling patients. So Mather Hospital's outpatient alcohol and substance use program is based upon the position that substance use is a disease that adversely affects the mind, body, and spirit of the individual, as well as his or her loved ones. At Mather, we believe that recovery can occur with specialized personal treatment and family involvement. We do service people here from adolescents, ages 13 to 18. We have the co-occurring tracks as well for addiction and mental health. There's men's groups and women's groups for specific topics, including trauma, relationships, and family reunification. We have an educational series and a DWI track, and we also have a professionals program. The gambling disorders groups and individuals is a separate track here as well. So what services do we offer? There's intensive outpatient for adults. It's 3 hours a day for 3 days a week. They're usually in that for 6 weeks. Medication-assisted treatment is available for substance use disorder. And then there's individual and group counseling that's available 1 to 3 times per week. It's all based on person-centered and need. Psychiatric evaluations and medication management. We do have a psychiatrist on staff. And we offer family sessions as well. We do have a family group that meets once a week on Tuesday evenings, and that's a free group to the community for anybody that has a family member in their life that is struggling with addiction. So this is the training center that if somebody was interested in getting even more information regarding gambling or getting some training on how to help somebody with a gambling problem, you can go onto this site. It is free. You can sign up and you can get a lot of information from the NYC PG Training Center. So this is how you contact the clinic. I did throw my email up in there. So if anybody had any specific questions, please feel free to email me directly. And just some references. And thank you so much for attending today. And I guess at this point, we'll take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Alice. That was an extremely informative presentation. Yeah, we could go to questions now. If anyone has any questions, you could put them in the Q&A feature on the bottom of the screen. All questions are anonymous to protect your privacy. We could give it a little moment.
Sure. I do see somebody with their hand raised. I think you have to enter a question. I don't think we can unmute you.
I think one question just popped up. Let me know if you could see that.
I can. So where can we get the recording of the session?
So that will be posted on our YouTube page and also on our website at Mather.
And then I greatly appreciate your message and presentation. It was right to the point and progressional. Thank you.
Okay, we'll give it another second.
And then just thank you, Alice, for a wonderful presentation.
Okay, great. If anyone has any additional questions, you can email them to matherhospital@northwell.edu. Thank you again, Allison. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Once you exit the webinar, you will also see a link to complete a brief survey. If you could help us complete the survey, your feedback is extremely important to us. It helps us plan our future programs. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. And if you would like to view any of our other HealthyU webinars, you can find them at www.matherhospital.org/HealthyU. Have a great day, everyone.